This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Montana's Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force is extending the deadline for tribal colleges to apply for a grant to start a missing persons database after no college applied the first time around. Olivia Reingold reports.
One of the state task force's key mandates is to award the Looping In Native Communities Grant, a $25,000 matching fund meant to help create a missing persons database. No tribal colleges applied by the deadline earlier this month.
I wasn't shocked.
Ellie Bundy McLeod, a former tribal college employee and newly elected Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribal Council member, sits on the state task force. She says the initial month-and-a-half application window was too short for Montana's tribal colleges to gather all the information they needed to apply, like their plan for meeting data verification and security standards.
And then I think there are concerns about, is $25,000 enough to do what's required?
The bill that created the grant and task force, State Senate Bill 213, says the database must be administered by a data specialist who meets certain qualifications. Tina Chamberlain, the Link Grant Coordinator with the Montana Department of Justice, says the size of the grant isn't what stopped colleges from applying.
The funding is not an issue. It's simply a matter of the timing and having the appropriate people submit an application.
Chamberlain says leading up to the first deadline, she spoke with all 7 of Montana's tribal college presidents at a meeting for AHAC, the American Indian Higher Education Consortium. She also says she reached out to each college president to make sure they got a copy of the application. The task force decided to extend the application deadline to January 25th in a recent conference call. For National Native News, I'm Olivia Reingold in Billings, Montana.
Conservation advocates in South Dakota are encouraging Congress to pass legislation which could help endangered wildlife. Roz Brown has more.
The Recovering America's Wildlife Act would dedicate funding to allow state and tribal wildlife managers to step up their conservation efforts. Chris Hessla with the South Dakota Wildlife Federation says the bill would provide about $10 million to South Dakota to proactively keep species off the endangered list.
Things like butterflies, bats, fox turtles, and blue suckers here in South Dakota, and even the greater prairie chicken, which was a game animal, but right now it's so sparse it doesn't have habitats to live.
State agencies have identified about 12,000 species across the U.S. that could benefit from this type of funding. If it's passed, the bill would allocate about $1 billion annually to wildlife conservation efforts. Sean Grassel, a biologist with the state's Lower Brule Sioux Tribe, says the legislation would improve conservation efforts on tribal lands.
Each tribe can develop their own species of greatest conservation need list. So what I keep telling folks, it's landmark legislation for tribes. For the states, it's a significant piece of legislation, but for tribes, it's landmark.
Grassel says additional funding could also help the Lower Brule tribe continue its efforts to save the black-footed ferret. Considered North America's rarest mammal, it was nearly extinct until tribes collaborated with the Forest Service to save the species.
This is a project that has national significance where the tribe voluntarily stepped up to be a partner with the federal government to recover ferrets, but we have no idea where our funding is going to be from one year to the next.
The bill has more than 130 co-sponsors, both Democrats and Republicans, although South Dakota Representative Dusty Johnson has not taken a position on it. I'm Roz Brown.
And I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Kawanak Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. More at aarp.org.
Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for more than 30 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.